Welcome back to Two Lads, One League. I'm Nick, that's Matt. And first off, thank you so much for all the views in our first episode premiere that premiered on YouTube last, what was that, Thursday when England or when Argentina took down England. We gave an initial reaction to that, and then we only thought it fair that we give an initial reaction, or I guess an instant reaction, to the World Cup final between Argentina and Spain. Um, Quite an interesting game to say the least, Matt. I don't know what your thoughts were on it, but I guess we can start with that, and then we're going to do a little bit of Premier League talk because that is actually what this show is about. But we'll start with the final. Matt, I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Obviously, Spain winning 1-0 in extra time. What was your initial reaction after seeing that result?
The better team won at the end of the day. It was a eye-opening, very eye-opening statistics after the game, seeing that Argentina had, I think, zero shots and zero on target, and Spain, I think, had 16 shots total. Maybe, I don't know if that was the final stat at the end, but I know towards the end I saw 16 shots, 11 on target to Argentina zero. And I think that just summed up a lot of not just that game, but Spain's performance throughout the whole tournament, just how dominant they've been. And you run into big teams like France and Argentina and England, and it wasn't even necessarily a difficult game for them when they played France, and now they had to do the same thing to Argentina. So it's quite interesting and also promising to see from at least a youth side from the Spain squad. Just all the youth talent and then be able to play together. I mean, yes, a lot of them do play together in their for their clubs, but it was definitely a really nice to see the right team win. I know a lot of people wanted Argentina and Messi and whatnot, but at the end of the day, it was really nice to see good soccer, flowing football. And at the end of the day, the stats showed which team really should have won. And Spain, I thought, was that team. I will say all the players on Spain really showed out. That's one thing, too, that I think makes a big distinction between Spain and some other teams is you've got a lot of the individual talents. And if those individual talents can all play together, a lot of that's like France and, Argentina, England, so on and so forth. So it was nice to really see, like I said, you got some of these players on Spain that do play together, but you look at France and a lot of those guys play at PSG together. So there's really not much of a difference from that standpoint. And you saw Spain really be on the heavy on the front foot for that. So it was really nice to see. I thought their performance against France was definitely a statement win, showing, hey, we can play anybody. And they didn't let up anything in the final, despite it being zeros. I think Argentina defended well. They got lucky. You need luck in the final. But at the end of the day, the better team won.
Yep, 100% agree. I think a lot of people out there, especially what people would consider the experts and analysts, really slept on Spain all tournament. And then I think really slept on them after they drew 0-0 to Cabo Verde in like the first game of their
Oh,
tournament. And
yeah.
so then France obviously statement win, but I still think a lot of people thought Argentina was going to win that game. And look, my initial reaction after that was justice is served and that best team won, and the team that did not win, in my opinion, didn't even deserve to win. Um, I think I look, I said it after the England game. I really struggle with Argentina. I almost like I was talking to some friends and I just could not believe the way that they approached the final game yesterday when we watched that.
Hmm.
I thought that they went about. I mean, Spain is the superior team, but Argentina is still number one in the world, so it's not like they're bad. And I just felt like Argentina went in, tried to rough up Spain, committing a lot of fouls, being what I don't even know if I call it aggressive. I just think it was, committing like fouls and being
It was
annoying
very
on
physical.
purpose. And then I thought the ref handled it pretty well throughout the game. You let stuff go. Like last thing you need is be giving out cards left and right in a World Cup final, and then everybody's on edge. But the shots. alone in the game were like 18-0 in the regular 90 minutes. And then I guess Argentina had a couple chances after they went down 1-0, but like no way Argentina deserved to win that game. Like no way. I refuse to believe it. I really did not like the way they went about that final game. I kind of lost, I think, maybe a little bit of respect for some of those guys on that team. And a lot of those guys obviously playing in big clubs across Europe. And so even like just after the reactions after they beat England and then the way they took the loss yesterday was just like, man, they don't know how to win humbly and they don't know how to lose humbly. And it's like
Yeah.
I thought just some of the, I mean, there were like some of the fights at the end of the game with like Paredes from Argentina. Like, I mean, that's total sore loser. Like, he'll be suspended multiple games, and whether it's for club or country going forward. And like, Spain won it fair and square, and they were humble about it, and they weren't like all up in everybody's face. And I was like, this Argentina team just. They don't deserve this. Actually, it's going to be really interesting. The whole Enzo Fernandez stuff with Argentina and Chelsea and him playing in England. It's going to be interesting to see what the rest of his summer looks like because I think there's a world where, I mean, outside of maybe Chelsea fans, like I think he's going to get a lot of slack and a lot of hate from Premier League people in general once that season starts up here in a month just because of his antics after they beat England. And then he looked like a fool against Spain, and he was obviously well deserving of that second yellow to get sent off. I'd like to wave your hand out like that and like wag your finger like no 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 like there's no way that's a second yellow, and then you watch the replay and you're like bro I mean that's a yellow any day anytime.
Hmm.
Like you're all like that was a hot-headed play, and it finally caught up to you. Like you probably should have been sent off in other games in this World Cup. Like I just thought the way Argentina played. I mean, obviously it's a hats off to Spain. I mean, they were the best team in this tournament. They deserve to win the tournament. They are the ones that should be celebrated. And look, it was probably what Messi's last World Cup game. And speaking of, if we're talking about goats, I mean, he was a ghost yesterday. Barely touched the ball. I mean, now
Yeah,
granted,
but
what's he supposed to do when they sit back and defend the whole game?
no, I hear you. And at that point, it's we're not disrespecting Messi by any means. He's the greatest of all time. I think he is the game itself.
Absolutely.
And there's no arguing that. But I think yesterday was very defeating, not just for him, but for the ideology behind what the intention of what he wanted to do with the squad and what the squad thought they could do. And then it's tough because it's not an individual sport like golf or tennis or things along those lines. This is full 11 players on the squad starting, let alone that being the finishing 11 that's going to end the game. So you have a 26-man roster. Everyone's got to be a part of it,
Yeah.
whether you are that main person. I get Messi's level on Argentina's squad's a bit different when it comes to the connotations that he brings versus maybe you're a Harry Kane on England or a Jude Bellingham in England. It's a bit different. And I think we still saw one of the greatest performances we've seen from a 39-year-old
Oh yeah.
um, with this type of with this atmosphere and all the different obstacles and challenges that these European teams had to face coming over here. But at the same time, like we talked about, it was nice to see Spain win. And I am more I'm happy to see them win because like I said, it was good for the sport. Like I said, like we talked about, the better team won. With all the scandals, everything going on with the whole tournament, from USA's red card being pulled back to
Yeah.
many times of different tackles, not just, the messy tackle, so to speak, on, I think it was a Cape Verde tackle, or maybe it was against Saudi Arabia, maybe. I
Yeah, I
forget
think
who
that's
they
what it
played.
was. Yeah.
On the back of the calf, things like that. It just, all the scandalous calls that we've seen, at the end of the day, the right team, in my opinion, won the tournament. So I
Don't
was
disagree.
satisfied with it. It was nice to see, as a Spurs fan, that's third year in a row or third World Cup in a row, being on the Spurs squad, that someone's won the World Cup.
Isn't that
So
crazy? And he started
he
every game
started, and he
pretty much.
actually didn't start at first in the
No,
knockouts or in the
Llorente
group
started
stage.
over him. Yeah.
And then next thing you know, I mean, you see just the level of confidence I think he has, and I think he brought a lot of that confidence from. staying up in the Prem, signing a new contract. Like you got nothing to lose. Go out there and just shine, baby. And he did. And
Played well.
it's gonna be interesting season. But even for not just Pedro Porro, but another. I mean, you see how critical a Rodrigo is on
Uh,
Spain. He's the best defensive midfielder.
Controls the entire
Um,
game. It was
and
actually blatant in that World Cup
it's
final.
every single time he touches the ball, the tempo of the game changes. Whether it stops, whether it slows down, speeds up, it doesn't matter. But it is so critical to have a player like him. And you go back, I don't know, 8, 9 years ago when he was purchased from City from Atletico, you see what Pep saw in his eyes
Yeah.
and what kind of mentality he was thinking, what I want out of my six. And now you kind of see how one player can change the mental of the tempo of a game so dramatically, not just from your own side, but also from the opponent's side. At that point, Argentina's like, okay, well, we can't press because we press, we're going to get countered, or the ball's going over the top, and they have the talent to do it.
Yeah.
You go out to Lamine or whomever. So it's just really interesting to see these types of nations lining up, and then you translate that into the upcoming season, whether it's Prem, La Liga, whomever, and you really understand now what some of these players are designed to do in their roles, and maybe it helps kind of our audience understand maybe why we would pick a Elliot Anderson over a Declan Rice, or Morgan Rogers over a Pedro Neto. I don't know, whatever the case may be, but there's different things that you have to look at when it comes to these roles. And I just wanted to point out Rodri because I think he was so critical. If they didn't have him, they I don't think would have won the World Cup.
It's interesting. It was pretty blatant yesterday. Just shows how important he is as a
Yeah.
player. Um, I mean, obviously they controlled the whole game. They were the better team, and so I don't know how much more there is to say. Like they were the better team. Like in fact, it really wasn't even a game. I know the score would suggest it was a game,
Yep.
but it really wasn't that much of a game. I mean, Argentina had so not a lot of the. I mean, early first half they had like a decent amount of the ball, but they could create nothing, and then second half they had nothing. And
Right.
so obviously once the red card happened, it was. I mean, it was just Spain was pressing and controlling the ball and getting looks, and finally one win in. So, any other final thoughts on the final?
No, no, I think time to transition it to what we started this podcast about.
Yeah. A good time to start the podcast because of the World Cup, but then also bad time because we have yet to talk about what this podcast is actually for. So, what we're actually going to be doing here going forward is all about the Premier League, our favorite league by a mile. Actually, really the only league I watch religiously. We obviously are Spurs fans. That will be very obvious the more we talk. Um, but yeah, we're going to talk about, we're going to preview games going into weekends. We're going to recap them the following week. Talk about transfers. We're obviously in the heart of transfer season. Players are returning to training after the World Cup, outside of obviously the few nations that were left. Um, and I'm sure we'll get into a part of the show where we do a lot of like prediction talk and what the seasons could look like. Maybe even like kind of do deep dives on teams and all that as we approach, the season, which starts August 22nd, I think, which is super fun. But I think the main thing to talk about here is the transfer market. The transfer market in all of its craziness and all of its you know, wild nature that it is in. And we've had some very, very, very large sums of money spent by multiple clubs, not just ours, even though ours is the highest spender. Um, let's just start off with main takeaways from the first month of the transfer market. Let's just start there. Then we can dive into specific players if we want. Because I
Well, we
know
had a lot of speculation on potential transfers. Elliot Anderson going to City. Um, you have certain likes out of West Ham that are leaving. I don't know if many people know, but Fulham did sign Ricardo Pepi from United States or
they,
PSV.
they did
So
pull
he's
that
coming
off.
in. They bought him before the summer, I believe,
Okay.
or the end of the season. So I know he's coming in, which would be nice to see, at least from an American standpoint. I love the U.S. being able to represent the Prem. So you got that, which is going to be interesting. So he's going to be playing with Anthony, which is going to be good.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that. Um, Another, I mean, let's just address the elephant in the room. Just recently, we have the Morgan Rogers take. So
Yeah.
I think
Crazy.
let's do that first because I want our audience to understand too. Yes, we may be slightly biased because we're Tottenham fans. Don't get me wrong, and we're gonna get criticized for it, which I'm okay with. But end of the day, we are gonna be talking about majority of the league and the
Yeah,
teams within it.
for sure.
Um, yes, like I said, there may be some bias here and there, but
We're pretty good at not being biased about this stuff. Maybe not
about
the
this
World
stuff,
Cup.
I
If
would agree.
anybody
Yeah,
listened to the first episode and a half, they know that
totally,
I hate Argentina. So like that is what it is.
totally. And there's
Morgan
gonna be players in
Rogers,
Arsenal, I'll tell you, that are good. Don't get me wrong.
yeah.
But I will
And
say,
maybe you hated on Declan Rice a little bit with England. So yeah, maybe we are a little
well,
biased.
that's a long story. That's a long story. But there's just too many players in his position that are better that I'm just like, your standard needs to go up. But that's a different story.
Yeah, I mean,
So in terms of though this big elephant in the room. As much as we want to maybe divert in some of the early transfers, Tottenham spending some money. We haven't really seen that, especially from just the viewpoint of us being fans
yeah.
and non-fans. You know that Tottenham does not spend money. So we may say that for a different episode, but let's address the elephant in the room right now about Morgan Rogers being on Arsenal's short list forever. And then next thing you know, he signs for Chelsea.
That's how it
Um,
works.
and
That
you
works.
know what? It's crazy because the amount of money that they spent, it's interesting. Just you got inflation, you got things cost more, of course. In this case, I guess people cost more,
Yeah.
players cost more, prices are going to increase, and there's this whole ideology behind how it's getting out of hand. It's getting out of hand. It's getting out of hand. Well, it's getting out of hand because you've got people out there making the prices for this, and then other people are willing to pay it. So I don't understand what's wrong about that when people are willing to pay it. Um, yes, I get some valuations may be far-fetched, but at the end of the day, it's no different than owning an asset under a company.
Yeah.
Your player's under contract. This is what they're worth. If you want them, this is how much they cost. So if people overspend, they do. So on and
Yep.
so forth.
And they are.
Um, but back to Morgan Rogers, you know, it's no different than a Declan Rice purchase, an Elliot Anderson purchase, a Tonali purchase, Mateus Fernandez purchase. They're in line right there. Obviously, very different positions, and a lot of things go into the price of a person. But in the story, let's move on from that because we could talk a lot about the pricing of what makes a player. Just the fact that Morgan Rogers snubs Arsenal for Chelsea, I think, is a massive, massive deal. Very interesting. One thing I wanted to say, and I want to hear your take about this. His celebration throughout his whole season is just the cold. It's Palmer.
Yep.
So it's interesting seeing that because as much as I don't want him to go to either team. I think it's gonna be interesting seeing those two play together. Morgan
Yeah.
Rogers, Cole Palmer with a João Pedro up top, I think is
Yep.
going to be gross
I
of an
mean, is it
attack.
gonna be like a is it gonna be like a 4-3-2-1 deal with that team?
Well,
Like
who knows? Because it looks like Chelsea's right now going for LaCroix over at Crystal Palace.
I saw that.
And under Xabi Alonso,
So
he
it's either
plays that
three,
three back and
yeah,
he needs that pace. Back in the day, he had Hincapié, he had, um, oh,
Tapsova and
Tapsoba was the center, I believe. And then you had
there's
one
another one.
more. Um,
Did he play? Yeah, he did.
he was in
It,
he plays he's French.
yeah, wrong guy to ask.
Mukiele?
Oh, yeah,
Maybe it was Mukiele. I think he plays for Sunderland now.
yeah.
I don't know if that was him. I could be wrong. I could be wrong on that, so don't quote me. But it was a three back. You had Flooring up there in that cam position with your two strikers.
Well,
So
because
you
he had
put
Frimpong on the right and he had Grimaldo
mhm,
on the left. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
exactly. So I think he's going to do a lot with him in that front three, or even on that left side,
It's
running up
gonna
that
be
side. It's
it's
going to
gonna
be
be
interesting.
interesting to see how
Um,
how they all gel. The thing is, I tell you
Totally.
what, Chelsea's like really struggled. Like, and I feel like Chelsea is a club where if it's not right away, then they go to drastic measures. And look, Morgan Rogers is a hell of a player, and so the club's willing to spend big on him. Then that, I mean, it makes sense. He will sit up with Cole Palmer and Pedro above them. I think there's going to be a couple players on that roster. It's going to be interesting to see how they all fit, especially if he does play a three back and he does like a 3-4-2-1.
Yeah.
Um, I think Chelsea has some glaring issues on that team. That the attack I think is fine. Obviously, strong midfield duo and Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo, but the defense is definitely shaky. I mean, Cucurella now gone. They signed that Palestri at right back, but they also have Malo Gusto there, which there's rumors of him leaving and maybe going to City.
And Reece
Uh,
James.
and Reece James, wherever he plays, sometimes midfield, sometimes right back. And then the center back position for them is kind of wonky, honestly.
Is it Chalaba?
I mean, it's Chalaba, it's Levi Colwell, I mean, Fofana, um, kind of just like there's a couple other guys who really don't
Dorel
play.
Hato, but he plays left.
He kind of plays left too. Like if they sign LaCroix, then they have him. It'll be an interesting. The thing is, I don't think that there's a world where, as of right now, they're competing with Arsenal and Man City.
Right.
I do think there's a world where they're competing for third. I think that there's some other places that they need to purchase. But look, Javi Alonso is a now you could say seasoned coach who has succeeded and won with, Bayer Leverkusen in a league that only Bayern Munich wins. And so that's if you're Chelsea, it's exciting, but hopefully they give him a little bit of time if it maybe doesn't go super well right away.
Right.
Like you just can't just blow it all up right away. Like because that's it's just going to get worse. So you got to let some guys figure it out. Yes, there's a point like Tottenham last season spent too long letting Thomas Frank try to figure it out, and it was never working. And then, they almost, went down because of it. And then they hired an interim that made no sense, and then that didn't work. And thank God that Robert De Zerbi was willing to sign. And I mean, he totally saved us. And it's like, just if you're Chelsea, you have the talent, give it a second, let it gel. These guys are going to be coming back from the World Cup. Like you have a minute. I mean, Enzo Fernandez and Morgan Rogers are two guys, right? That, it's going to be a minute before we see them wearing a Chelsea jersey. They'll get to go on holiday and all that fun jazz before they return. I just think that people like Chelsea, the expectations are always high, rightfully so. But I think that right now they're competing for third at best, even with
Yeah.
Morgan Rogers.
Third, I mean, I don't even think third's high. I mean, I think you got Arsenal City. I mean, I put Tottenham up there. I put United up there. Um, I put I know I'm missing. I mean, I put Aston Villa up there.
I mean,
I mean, you've
probably
got
probably Liverpool.
Liverpool. I mean, you've got a very thick front, eight list of competitive teams, and then you're leaving out at that point the Brightons, the Bournemouths, the
And there's always one of them that's, if
yep,
not multiple, that have a great season.
exactly, the Crystal Palace, the ones that finished, the ninth, tenth, Fulham's, whatever, so on and so forth. So it's going to be interesting, kind of seeing what this season looks like. It's going to be like your typical season with who gets promoted, gets relegated. It's always nice seeing that somebody getting promoted stays. So I'm really hoping that happens and maybe someone's season goes down. But I do think the competition in the league has gotten to the point where we have been waiting for it because it's been too much of a distinction between the top league and the championship. And after we've seen now Sunderland, um, who got promoted last season? We got Sunderland. Why am I blanking on this?
Burnley,
Sunderland, Burnley, and who else?
Sunderland, Burnley, and oh God, who went down? Who stayed in the league? They finished right above us. Oh no, that's bad.
Oh, Leeds.
That's it. Yeah, they finished
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
Leeds. Leeds. I was like, who was it? So you got those three teams coming up. They stay. All three of them did, which was awesome to
oh,
see.
Burnley went down.
Oh, sorry, Burnley went down. Yes, two of them stayed of the three, which was nice to see. But Sunderland made a name for, I mean, your top 10 placements, which is
Yep.
awesome. And in fact, they got Europe, which is even better. So, you know, number one, it's nice because the league's growing. You got people that are players out there that now want to maybe go to a championship team because the exposure's there. And I'm really excited to kind of see where the competitiveness is from your first half of the table, the middle table, even the bottom half.
Hmm.
I mean, obviously, unfortunately, we've experienced fighting for the bottom half the last 2 seasons, so maybe
Yes, we
this
have.
season will be change. This change will change, but ultimately, I do think that the front or the top six, seven teams will be neck and neck all season, and I'm really hoping it's going to be more of a top three, top four title chase until the last couple games. Maybe you've got 1 and 2 playing or 1 and 4 playing, and you've got maybe 4 or 5 games left in the Prem, something like that. Nothing where it's somebody like Arsenal last season just being at the top the whole time,
Yeah.
and you know it's really nice seeing other teams be able to compete. But I'm really excited to see what's going to happen. I mean, um, you look at these transfers, and ultimately, it's tough to get behind a transfer that maybe is not a player that's already in the Prem going to a Prem team versus somebody getting bought out of the Prem or getting bought from another league coming to the Prem.
Yeah.
So you've got that too, and we know how Morgan Rogers plays, and so it's going to be interesting what he can do for Chelsea and under Xabi Alonso. But ultimately, from your take of them fighting for three, I do maybe see a word of that, but I don't think they're going to be as good maybe as some people say. I think they're going to have some major struggles. Plus, that back line seems very weak at the moment. But again, we have over a little over a month before the window closes.
We
That
know
could
they
change.
spend, so we'll see.
That could change.
I mean, what about
Um,
like, I mean, they spend money, so there's no denying that. Like, however, they also sell. So we'll see kind of what that looks like for Chelsea going forward. But look, Morgan Rogers is a big deal. That's a big signing. Aston Villa's kind of spent that money right back. So bringing in a couple guys just recently. But I mean, there's a couple other clubs that have done business this summer, but I would argue have not done, it's not good or bad business, but haven't made themselves much better is probably a better way to say that.
yeah.
Um, One of those teams right off the bat to me is Liverpool. I think Liverpool coming off of a down season, obviously fire or sack Arne Slot. Some of those guys, Mo Salah is now gone. Some of those guys also getting a little bit older, like Virgil van Dijk is a
Kanate.
little bit. Konate's gone. He went to Real Madrid. Obviously, they don't have Alexander Arnold. Andy Robertson's now gone. He went over to Spurs. Allison, I feel like, has been struggling over the past couple of years. Um, Look, they still have some. Their midfield's. I mean, I love Szoboszlai, Gravenbach, McAllister. They have very good players. There's no denying that. I just feel like from a summer business standpoint, as of today, they brought in two guys. They had brought in that center back out of I think Rennes, and then they just brought in Victor Munoz, who was on the Spanish national team. I can't remember what club he was from, but I don't. Are those move the needle guys? Because to me, they're not as of right now. At least if you comparing Liverpool to the other big six clubs and the business the other big six clubs have done. I mean, Man City has brought in obviously Elliot Anderson. 10 minutes. That's hilarious. Has brought in Elliot Anderson. They'll definitely do more business, I'm sure. Obviously, Tottenham's brought in like six dudes. Tonali Fernandez, Andy Robertson, Marco Senesi from Bournemouth, the backup keeper, and then obviously on Paul Van Hecke from Brighton. And then you have Arsenal now signing the left winger out of Club Brugge. Solis or whatever his name is. Obviously, we're rumored for Morgan Rogers. They will spend money. We know that. They've been rumored now for Ezra Konsa as because Saliba's down for like 5, 6 months. Um, and then Man U. I mean, Man U maybe hasn't. That's actually kind of a funny one. Um, we only have 9 minutes left. I don't want to like just be negative, but like I don't. I love the Yuri Tielemans signing for Man U. And I think just as much as I love the Tielemans signing, I dislike the Andre Santos signing from
Yeah.
Chelsea. I think that it's a lot of money, obviously in an inflated market. It's a lot of money for a midfielder that hasn't really proven himself at Chelsea. Obviously, it's hard to prove yourself when you're sitting behind Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo in the lineup.
Yep.
However, still, that's a lot of money to spend on. to kind of take a risk like that. May work out. Man U was a team that had a great season last year with Michael Carrick at the helm. Is that something that they can continue to do next season, or do you think they'll kind of have a little bit of a drop off?
I mean, it's interesting because you look at they lost Casemiro. They tried to go get Ederson from Atalanta, but they didn't like some medical that he had, so who knows? And then Ederson extends his contract over at Atalanta. It's interesting because you have Cassie that moves, and you wonder, okay, well, Andre Santos is replacing him, and I'd argue that Yori Tielemans replaced them because Cassie scores. He
Yeah,
scores those crucial goals, and Tielemans does that. Yori does that. Like you just said, Andre Santos really hasn't proven his worth yet in the Prem. Just been back and forth between the umbrella of the owners and Chelsea, just back with Strasbourg and Chelsea.
yeah,
So there's really not much growth, in my opinion, from a player like that when you're kind of restricted in a way, but you're still given an opportunity. I don't think he was given maybe the right ones. Like you said, you have two players that are above him that he's only going to play unless they get hurt. You're not starting over Moises Caicedo nor Enzo Fernandez. So it's interesting, but I do think the Yori Tielemans signing will be a very big sleeper signing. I think he's going to be absolutely great for him.
I think it's great
Um,
signing.
and I think he can relate. I think Michael Carrick can relate a lot to him as just a player in position. So plus two, he wasn't terribly that expensive. What, 40 something million, 41
Yeah,
million?
yeah.
Nothing bad. I don't know how old he is. 29?
He's pushing 30. I know that.
Um, I remember him back when he was young over at Anderlecht, and he was just a youth prospect. And it's interesting because you've got that, and uh, ultimately, I want to make a point on Liverpool, and that can kind of close this one out for this episode because I know there's other clubs I want to talk about. But you mentioned Liverpool, and you mentioned Victor Munoz. You mentioned Jacques, I think his name is the center back. Um, and we've seen what happens just from a Tottenham standpoint. What happens when you don't replace someone like a Harry Kane or a Heung-min Son, and when you have a player like Mo Salah, and you don't replace them right away, you will see consequences from that. Especially too when you lose one of your starting center backs. In the season before that, your prospect of a center back leaves and goes to Leverkusen. So, you're losing a lot of that talent. And then who knows how long Van Dijk's left in his legs, and who knows how much Alisson's got left in him. And you got your good backup keeper, the Mavadishi, I forget his name, I'm talking about, that came, I believe, from Valencia. Um, so I'm sure he'll get a start at some point, but they got some holes to fill.
Yep.
And they're not going to see the type of success they used to have without finding someone like a Mo Salah or finding someone like Klopp. And I think they are on the right track doing Iriola. I think he's going to be great for them. I just think he's going to do a lot more of the youth side, really get Rio into the team, which is going to be interesting. They
But he only signed
spent,
a 2-year deal. That's weird to me.
but you also got to, right, and that is interesting. I mean, at some point, I feel like he will leave, but at the same time, too, you got to realize they spent so much last season on two strikers
Yeah,
that
that's
both were
true.
hurt.
That's true.
You drop 145 million, and some people say that it's one of the greatest signings and most bargain of a deal ever. And I'm like, well, I mean, the man barely played, so fair. Everyone's got their own opinions on it. I get it. And I love Alexander Isak. I think he's a great player. He's going to do really well for him at some point when he gets healthy. But then you also have Ekitike.
Hmm.
So I don't know what he sees in the future about this team or what. I just know that they don't have the money they used to because they spent it all last summer. And I think they're going to start seeing some of those issues this season. And I think one of the reasons why they switched coaches because I don't think Arnie Slot had the capacity to do so.
No. I also forgot about Florian Wirtz there too. I mean, him,
Oh yeah, and
Isak,
Florian.
Ekitike were the most three like expensive players ever.
Yep, and then Frimpong and Kirkeres were 80.
And yet we sit here and we're like, they're missing something. It's crazy.
So you let go. When you have your star player not leave for a transfer or extend,
Yeah.
Oh, you went away.
I'm here. I see
There.
you.
Camera shut off there.
That's hilarious.
You have to replace it. You have to
Yeah.
replace it. And so I'm curious to know what they're really trying to do. I see they're in likes for Bradley Barcola, and so is Arsenal. A lot of people are, but
Yeah.
who knows what really is going to transpire from that. Um, I feel like we've really seen the ups and downs on seeing speculation, and it's all. I mean, even back to the Tanguy Ndombele days with Pochettino, and it's like, oh my God, I think we signed him. Well, did we yet? No, and it's like so much speculation, speculation. And until actually someone pulls the trigger and you get the official confirmation that they're signing, or if that club presents, the new signing, then that point, it's real.
For sure.
Right now, the speculation is crazy. I'm really curious to know what's going to happen, but ultimately, I don't know if some of these teams are going to be able to uphold what they did last season.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of time left in this transfer market. So, I mean, we have well over a month. Um, I think it's always funny that the season starts before the market closes. I don't love that, but it is what it is. And a ton of business is still to be done. And honestly, some of these signings are coming out of nowhere. So, like, we knew Morgan Rogers was a target, didn't know Chelsea, and all of a sudden he's going to Chelsea, right? So these big clubs will spend money. There's a ton to talk about, obviously not on this episode alone, but future episodes. Some of these teams that qualified for Europe at the end of last season, like, have they done enough, to be able to compete in Europe and the Premier League as well as the two cups? That's a lot for a team like a Sunderland or a Brighton. And so we could talk more about that. You know,
And I'm going to say this real quick. Sunderland hasn't spent a dime.
I know. And I think they could be in for a rude awakening if they don't spend
They
much.
could easily, that could be a
Going
team
to
that
be a
gets
lot.
relegated.
It's going to be a lot when you have to play in the Prem, you have to play in the Europa League, and you have to play the Cup games. So it'll be
Yep.
interesting as we talk about some of these teams going forward as the season approaches, you know, what the expectations are and how can they, how are they going to be able to compete? Because a team like Sunderland, I think, will definitely take a step back with all this competition they have coming up this season. But, for now, we only touched on, I feel like, just Chelsea and Liverpool. There's a ton
There's a
with
lot of touch on
there's a
because
ton with
I just
Tottenham. There's a
I've
ton
seen
with
so much
Arsenal.
with I've seen so much, Nick, with a lot of these youth guys getting looked at by the Middlesbroughs, the Norwich Cities, the Prestons, um, even Hull City. Those teams that are coming up, and I've seen now it's interesting because I'm starting to see, like, even from a Tottenham standpoint, some of our youth guys and some youth guys from other clubs now getting to the point getting purchased and maybe even starting. So it's going to be nice to
Crazy.
see. I'm
I know.
excited.
Well, we got to wrap this up because we have less than a minute. That
Yeah.
means I don't know how much time we have because it doesn't tell me. So, second episode, two lads, one league, all about the Premier League. Now that the World Cup is over, we're fully diving into that. Next episode, I assume we're going to continue this transfer talk, and that'll probably be the whole episode because we only went with like two or three teams today, and there's a lot to talk about. So, that's Matt. I'm Nick. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, comment, all that fun jazz on the YouTube page. And yeah, we'll see everybody next time.